RW1.
Yeah, RW1.
There you go.
5417. Dumped in 22.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm completely blanking on the name on who we had out at the masterclass a month or two ago. Do you remember who it was, Jake?
No, I missed that one.
Was it, I think Tim,
Oh, yeah,
Tim
that's
O'Brien.
right. Tim, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tim. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did a phenomenal job, and I'm sure most people would say they love this specific barrel, but he actually bought a bottle, so I think that kind of backs it up and proves that it was a good bottle. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No doubt. That was some fun whiskey.
A podcast about bourbon and the ones who drink it. This is Bourbon Matters. Hey, welcome to Bourbon Matters. I'm Jake.
And I'm Gold Eagle Jake.
And we have special guest Bryan Smith on tonight from Hard Truth, which is in Indiana. Thanks for coming on, Bryan. I am a big fan of the distillery, so it's awesome to have you on.
That's an understatement.
Yeah,
he's a huge fan.
Well, it's an honor to be on here. Thanks for having me, guys. This is going to be fun.
Yeah. So you are the master distiller.
Yes, correct.
So hopefully we'll get to talk a little bit about some nitty gritty stuff. If you're
wide
open,
man. We don't have any secrets at Hard Truth, so you can ask me anything. I'll go way deep into the weeds.
Yeah. So, do we want to start at the top and go?
Yeah, I was going to say, how about
the brand and
how about before even that? How about a little background? Like, what'd you do before Hard Truth? How'd you get involved in Hard Truth? And then we can kind of go from the history and take it from there.
Sure. So I'm a Southern Indiana kid. Grew up in Evansville, Indiana, down in the southwestern part of the state. Really, my story that really what led me to Hard Truth and making whiskey starts with my my obsession and love of just creating great flavors through food, primarily. And then I was fortunate enough to have my father and his friends all got together, kind of some German and Dutch heritage down there, and so these guys for generations and generations would get together and they call it farmer's wine, and make sausage twice a year. And, it was always the same thing. It was just a big group of guys getting together for, a couple days and drinking pretty hard and having a bunch of laughs and making something that, all their friends and family could enjoy throughout the rest of the year. So, I as a kid and a teenager doing that with my dad, of course, obviously I wouldn't have never guessed that would lead to what I'm doing, but it certainly informed a lot of my passion and love for it. So then I had a great, a wonderful grandmother, who is a really tremendously talented cook. And I was her only grandchild. She sat me up on the counter from when I was 3-4 years old and would just put little favorite dishes. So anyways, I learned early that not only did I have a love for creating flavors with food, but I really was passionate about it, and then eventually through a lot of time was talented with it. So then fast forward, I went to Indiana University, got my degree in recreation therapy, which required quite a bit of biology and chemistry. So I had some good cursory knowledge, and then started brewing beer in college, and since then, it's after that, it was kind of just a fantastic opportunity crossed my path, and I took it up. So as far as my whiskey education, one of my good buddies from college is the head winemaker and started the distillation program at Starlight, Jason Heiligenberg.
Nice.
So learned a lot from him, and then pretty early on we got to know Shane and Pat from Wilderness Trail. And they really informed, my thought direction towards sweet mash. That really was kind of a real game changer for me whenever I learned Well, first of all, I heard a lot about the sweet mash, and I heard them talk about it, and to me, it sounded a little bit like a marketing thing. And then when I tried the first distillate, which was before they even had any whiskey out, it was only 2-year-old whiskey, and they drilled a barrel, and it just kind of blew my mind. So, that's like a little short synopsis, but my business partners, they had still have a successful beer brand in Indiana, Quaffon Brewing Company, and some great brew pubs. And so in 2014, when the laws changed, allowing just a brewery or a winery to co-locate a distillery on their property, was when this whole journey started. So I joined with those guys then, and started with a little 900 square foot room with 2 really crappy pot stills, and in a dream. And here we are 8 years later with this big, beautiful distillery and some killer sweet mash whiskey. So
nice. Yeah. I mean, you're kind of underselling the property because it's absolutely awesome.
Thank you.
We stopped by a couple years ago on our way back from Kentucky and had lunch and got a tour, and like the place is just so cool.
Thank you.
I was upset because I was like, I wish we could have spent like the whole day there, but we were just passing through.
I think people when they think about a distillery tour or visiting a distillery, they think about kind of the old paradigm where it's only open from 11 to 3 Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and you got to drive 2 hours to get there, and then you get there and you spend 45 minutes there learning about the rules of bourbon and drinking this much whiskey, and then getting back in your car. And so we didn't have the same kind of restrictions or covenants in Indiana that a lot of the historical distilleries have in Kentucky. Of course, a lot of that's changed since then. But so we really, from the beginning, we knew we wanted to blow out our experience portion of our visitor guest experience. So 325 acres. We've got a 300-seat restaurant, 1,000-person outdoor music venue, which we've upgraded since you were there last, down in the woods. We've got distillery tours, side-by-side ATV tours. We drive, you drink. Just give you an idea, on a nice weathered Saturday, we'll have between 2,000 and 3,000 people on our property at one time. So I think when people do show up for the first time, they're kind of like you were. They're like, oh, God, I didn't know that this was going to be like this. I wish we had carved out more time for it. So pretty common thing. But you can come back. We'll have you back.
I was going to say, I still haven't made it down. I need to make it down there. I got like 6 Kentucky trips planned this year. So hopefully on one of them I can squeeze in a night at Hard Truth. But everyone that I've talked to, everyone, that's been there has said it's like the Disneyland for bourbon. So I know I absolutely need to make it down there. And especially for a concert. I'm a big music guy too. So
So if you look up, so here's what you do: go to Brown County Music Center and look at their concert lineup. They're right across the road from us. And we also have some great music on our live stage, but they bring in some bigger national acts, and it's good to kind of have that as one night and then spend a couple days at Hard Truth. But for your Chicagoland friends, I mean, we're only 15, 20 minutes off of I-65. So as you're heading down to Louisville from Chicago, you hit that Columbus, Indiana exit. We're just 15 minutes to the west. It's really, when people find out how close we are when they're taking those trips down to Kentucky, they're like, I can't believe we never stopped here.
Yeah. Well, I made it a point because I was like, I want to go. I was like, I don't care how far out of the way it is. But I was like, oh my God, it's like right off the highway. So
it is. Yeah. Starlight's a little bit to get to, it's kind of, you got to wind and wiggle through those hills to get to Starlight, but we're right off the road, man.
Awesome. So, so you've been with the brand since day one?
Yes. But essentially, so they had bought the 2 stills, and Cole Smith, who was working for them in the brewery, they kind of brought him over and said, "Hey, let's figure out what we're doing here." And he had done, I think, 1 or 2 mashes of he got some malted barley from the brewery, and just did a 100% malt mash. But really, the wonderful thing about my partners is they're thoroughbred entrepreneurs, right? They're guys that they jump off of the cliff and then get together and figure out how to build a bridge. So it was an awesome opportunity, and so Cole and I kind of took it on, and really, so it wasn't like one of us came from the industry and had this idea of like, we're going to be known for barrel finished whiskeys. We're going to source X, Y, and Z. This was all organic, bit by bit. We have never had investors. We're all privately funded, with, just rolling money forward from the business. So it's been awesome. It's been, it's kind of neat to have a project that doesn't necessarily have a focus from the start, because you can kind of meander and plant and pivot and do new things. So it's been just an awesome 8-9 years.
Yeah. So, Bryan, take us through a little bit of that day one before you guys were operating in Indiana. Yeah. You distilled, I think it was 30 barrels in Kentucky. And yes. Maybe you can't disclose where it was at, but you said you learned about the sweet mash from Wilderness Trail. So maybe our listeners can.
I can disclose it. We just couldn't put it on the label for legal purposes. But yeah, so really we started distilling in 2015. We had about a year and a half under our belt. We weren't making whiskey yet because we didn't really have a system that could process corn. Essentially, we could make malt whiskey, but that was it. So once the land came available, that eventually where the distillery is sitting now, and the plans got put forth that, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to build a big distillery and a distillery experience. That's when it was, it was kind of on me and my team to figure out what do we want to be when we grow up. What kind of system do we want to run? What kind of whiskeys do we want to make? Do we want to be known for whiskey? Because at that point in time, we had and still have a couple killer rums and vodkas out there that, a lot of distilleries kind of stop producing once their whiskey's out. But these things are just crushing it in the market. So we still got those out. So, but once we knew what we wanted to be, and I met Shane and Pat, learned about Sweet Mash, we had talked with them, and I said, hey guys, what do you think about if we just basically get some time on your stills? So most brands that do this, they just buy whiskeys that are, from MGP or from, wherever Barton or whoever has in their like kind of standard mash bills, the 21% rye bourbon or, the 95.5 rye. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to have our own mash bills. So I had developed our first 3 mash bills, which is our, now our sweet mash bourbon, our wheated bourbon, and our sweet mash rye. So those 3 mash bills are the first 3 I developed. And we went to Shane and Pat and said, could we just make one run of each of these on your stills? Because we knew we were going to have a continuous column from Vendome, which is what they were running. They already sold us on using their yeast, so we knew we were going to use yeast from Firm Solutions, their other company. We knew we wanted to do sweet mash. We made a deal with Independent Stave, which is the same cooper that they use their barrels from. So, there were some synergies there, and I thought, well, we're going to put our own twist on it, but let's at least get a baseline of like, what are these mash bills going to taste like, so we can start talking about them. We can start planning. And so we made 35 barrels, so 12 of 2 of the mash bills and 11 of the other mash bill, and let them sit. So they sat in Kentucky for a year. Then once we got our rack house built, we brought them to Indiana, let them sit. But then something really interesting happened, which is the beautiful, amazing alchemy that is whiskey making, right? As our whiskey that we were making with all these same processes, same equipment, but in our own obviously geographic location, with our own grains, with our own water, and with our own aging warehouses. After our whiskey got to be about 2 years old, I was tasting it and I was benchmarking it against the stuff that we had made at Wilderness Trail. And I mean, they weren't even on the same planet with one another. They were both delicious whiskeys, but the flavor profile was just so widely different between the two. And so we thought, well, we'll just sprinkle in, a couple barrels from each of the earlier, the older stuff into our blends. We'll talk about it, but, kind of boost the flavor profile by having some older whiskey in there. But I knew from a longevity standpoint, I didn't want something that that had flavor characteristics that I couldn't continue to produce to, not follow its way through from blend 1 through blend 25. And so our idea was, let's release these as an origin series, tell the story about how we, found sweet mash, celebrate the origin story of Hard Truth, and release these as single barrels to special accounts, to where, for folks that actually find those Kentucky, let's say, Hard Truth Kentucky Sweet Mash on, that is not happening again. You know what I mean? That is literally a slice of our history. We don't have any more of those barrels. That is it. There are still some out in the wild. Yep, that's the Golden Eagle barrel pick. Eagle barrel pick. Yeah, there are still some out in the wild down in Kentucky and Indiana and Illinois. So if you can find it, it's a damn cool bottle. First of all, it's delicious. All of them are delicious, but they really, are a slice of our history.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. So as a store owner, obviously the main goal is to sell as much as we can.
Sure.
But this is one of those barrel picks where like I don't want to promote and push, and I'm happy with it kind of hanging out on the shelf just because those who know how good this is and how special this is, and how it just won't be created again, they know about it. But I do feel like they for sure fly under the radar. And being so young, that's another thing that I wanted to point out was the first time you guys came by, you had whoever was the rep at the time brought a bunch of, your original stuff, which was sourced from MGP in Tennessee.
Yes.
And I tasted through all those, and everything was just kind of like, okay, like, it's good, but there's plenty of other things that are just like it. And then right at the end, he whipped out a 2-year-old. And I almost didn't want to try it because he was like, this is our new 2-year-old rye whiskey. And I was like, oh boy, here we go. And then when I tasted it, I was blown away, and I was sold from that moment forward on Hard Truth. Do you have anything to say about how good your whiskeys are for being so young? And the same thing happened with the bourbon too. Like the bourbon, for how young it is phenomenal.
Thank you
it just
so much.
It really doesn't have any of those youthful characteristics that
Thank you so much.
A lot of 2 to 4 year old whiskeys have.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you very much. It's a nice compliment. I will say that our sweet mash rye, which is what is probably Nick presented to you all, that whiskey, I was just sure we were going to wait till it was 4 years old before we release, or any of our whiskeys, right? At 2.5 years, that whiskey made this turn, because we were evaluating it pretty hard because it seemed to be the one that was getting tastiest the faster, that particular mash bill. And then all of a sudden at 2.5 years, man, we started, not finding 1 or 2 barrels here and there, but finding entire production lots of that whiskey that were like, man, I'm either fooling myself or this is absolutely not only ready to go, but ready to compete right out in the market. And so I actually, it wasn't like an insecurity thing. I just needed a gut check. So along the way, I've made some great friends in the Kentucky bourbon industry, who are very honest folks with me. And, if I say, hey, I just need a gut check on this, I never tell them that it's, what we're going to do with it. I'll tell them the mash bill, but I always just say, hey, just give me your thoughts on this. And so I took that whiskey down, and it hit some pretty heavy hitter lips in the industry. And everybody came back with a resounding, I didn't tell them how old it was, with a resounding, wow, I'm not sure what you just, gave us, but that deserves to be out in the market. So it was somewhat surprising that whiskey got ready so fast. And then I'll tell you that from that moment, which was the end of 2021 to now, I really was somewhat concerned, because one of the things about especially our sweet mash rye, but all of our sweet mash whiskeys, is we really have a lot of big bright fruit notes in our whiskeys. A lot of complex sugars and really bright, like you said, clean. There's none of that like grassy or like like wet wood kind of notes that you find in younger whiskeys. It's real clean. It's real bright. I'm convinced that a good portion of that is due to the sweet mashing process, but because the distillate's so good that goes into the barrel. But I was afraid that specifically with that whiskey, maybe we don't want it to get 4 to 6 years old. Maybe that wood will start to kind of overpower that fruitiness. But I will tell you that the good news is that the entire body of that whiskey and all of our whiskeys is now aging into that 4-year plus range. And I think, I'm not sure what batch of sweet mash rye is out in Illinois right now, but I'll tell you what, we just bottled batch 10 of our sweet mash rye, and it's that moving forward. I mean, they're all delicious, but we're moving into a whole new realm now of richness and depth in that whiskey to pair with the big bright sweetness and fruitiness and clean taste of that whiskey. So it's been really exciting, and thank you for the bourbon. We just launched our 3 bourbons, core bourbon this year, and that was a big one. Obviously, there's a lot of bourbon out there, so to have your first release, you kind of get a little bit like, oh geez, but that turned out great. And next year we're going to back that up with some cask strength barrel picks of our bourbons, and we'll do some fun cask finishes and some older whiskeys. But those are kind of our core. The wheated bottled in bond, 4-grain bottled in bond, and our sweet mash bourbon. Those are our core bourbons that we plan to always have on the shelf.
Nice.
Can I go on record right now and request some samples of that bourbon when it's ready?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
sweet.
Yeah, I'm trying the bourbon for the first time tonight because
nice.
Unfortunately I missed that master class and I was really upset about it. And I was on vacation too, so I was like doubly upset because it was my own fault. But it's excellent. Like
Thank
lots
you very
of
much.
like you said, it drinks like it's much older than it is, and just has a lot of really good depth. And I think some like interesting notes too that like you wouldn't typically get on a bourbon. It's just extremely well done.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, it's it was really important for me also for our first bourbons to release a bottled in bond. We weren't planning on releasing 2 of the expressions in bottled in bond, but they both tasted so good at 100 proof. And then we knew that we wanted a core whiskey that was a little bit lower in proof because we're in 23 states now, and our on-premise bar and restaurant partners just really, bottle cost is important. And if we were going to get in there and replace some of their, whatever they would make their core drinks with, we really needed to come out with one that was between 90 and 100 proof and at a decent price point. So, the price points on our bourbons too for, 100% grain to glass, authentic whiskeys. I mean, we've kept the prices in the realm of reality for a young company.
Yeah, so
absolutely.
That's one of the things I wanted to ask you about was the decision to go straight to market at cask strength, or at least like batch or high proof strength with the sweet mash ryes. I think it's a phenomenal move because you're really showcasing all of the flavor of that rye. But that's kind of atypical. So
very
I don't know if
unheard
you
of.
had some thought process behind that because it is like a very uncommon move in the industry.
I will tell you that if that was a strategic move to make less work for ourselves, we didn't do it right. Because you're right, there's a lot of explaining to do to retail partners when they're like, wait, you've got your biggest and boldest whiskey, at your kind of your highest price point at cask strength, and that's what you were leading with, But I will tell you that one of the fortunate things that I've had the honor to be able to do is they've really given me and our team, I use the word our because it's a lot of people that do this. That make this whiskey happen. But we've really got full creative control. So that decision was driven by our palates, right? That's what that's where that whiskey shined, right? And so that's what, it tastes good at lower proof, and I would argue there's been some times when I've taken it down to 100 proof, and I did even like it a little bit better, some of the blends, but, I kind of wanted to have our first whiskeys in that cool custom bottle, whiskeys from our stills. I really wanted people to taste exactly how it came out of the barrel. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because you can manipulate flavors through proof and through filtration and through a lot of different ways. And I think it's the most honest expression of someone's whiskey when you just say, hey, we took 30 barrels, we dumped them, we did just a light mechanical filtration to get the charcoal out and put it right in the bottle. Just as those 30 barrels married, that's the proof it went in the bottle. And I think that's it's a cool way to release your whiskey, I think, especially right from the jump.
Very cool, but also very bold, because if people don't like it at cask strength, they're much less likely to go grab a bottle at 90 proof or 93 proof, which is what the High Road came out at recently. So
yes.
Yeah, you guys obviously knew what you're doing, and
yeah, thank you. Yeah, that Sweet Mash Rye is a big whiskey. I mean, it's certainly it's fun whenever I get together with real whiskey folks that like big whiskeys. It seems to always be the crowd favorite. But if we're just at just a basic tasting where there are people there not necessarily whiskey fans, and they're like, hey, let me try that. And maybe the boldest whiskey they've ever tried in their life was, Jim Beam White Label or something. It definitely leaves an impression.
Yeah.
Yeah. But our High Road Rye was really, that mash bill, utilizes some corn, and it's kind of more of a bourbon adjacent rye whiskey, or some people would call it like a Kentucky style rye, where it's got that 36% corn, I think 36, and so that corn really brings to the party an opportunity to bring the proof down a little bit, and it still be what I love about the High Road Rye is it sits on the shelf for under $50 typically, and it's 93 proof, but it's very full and rich. It's still oily. It's a good sipper. But man, it makes a tremendous old fashioned or Manhattan. And at that price point, you don't feel bad making cocktails with it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say about for clarity, I'm drinking the straight bourbon tonight, along with the Sweet Mash Rye. But
awesome.
Like all of your products, even the ones that are proof down, just have such strong flavor, which is, or can be uncommon for things sitting around 90 or like 94 proof.
Right.
So I think that's just a testament to how much flavor you're packing into, all of the products. And the Sweet Mash Rye definitely doesn't sleep on flavor.
No.
Like you said, it's very bold.
Yeah.
But it hits all the best rye notes.
Thank you.
And I think even it's a shame that our third podcast host, Dan, isn't here tonight. But Hard Truth is one of his favorite ryes, and he hates ryes. So I think that's a good testament to how well done it is.
Thank you. That's one of my favorite. When we get people to the distillery and I'll see them, I'll see a group of guys and they're drinking everything except for our rye. And I'll always say, hey, have you tried our Sweet Mash Rye? My favorite thing is when someone says, oh, I'm not a rye guy. I'm like,
classic.
Challenge accepted. I want you to try this, and most of the time, they're surprised at, a lot of people think of rye just as kind of savory, spicy, and kind of just like, fit in that one lane. But man, our Sweet Mash Rye is rich. It's sweet. It's creamy. It's spicy. It's then you get more of that, like almost toffee kind of sweetness to it. So it's really a ride on your palate. And I think that for people who are, into older bourbons, especially, some of those really, high age statement bourbons where you kind of get that same, like multi-layered experience on your palate. It really connects with those folks a lot.
Yeah, the sweet mash rye too almost has like some floral notes, which are fantastic.
Yeah, it kind of hits like every corner of the rye paradigm. I always talk about how there's like minty ryes, there's spicy ryes, there's sweet ryes, there's floral oaky ryes, but the Hard Truth rye really kind of hits a little bit of everything, which is why I think a lot of bourbon drinkers do enjoy the Hard Truth rye when they say they're not rye drinkers.
Yeah.
Well, and thank you. And I will say, I don't know, how in the weeds you want me to go with this stuff, but, everything, earlier when I said that I'm an obsessive person about creating flavors, I mean, that's really putting it mildly, right? And I've got a team of folks that are, equally, in most cases, even more talented than I am at making this, obsessive, goal towards making the absolute best product that we can, right? So for like the sweet mash rye, for example, 30 barrel batch, right? We aren't just saying, okay, we have 30 barrels that are now this age. Go pull them. We're going to put them together in a tank, and we're going to put it out. Chris Moore, who is kind of my right hand guy, does a lot of great stuff with our barrel program. But Chris, we have every barrel ID'd. We've got over 10,000 barrels now that we're holding. Every barrel's ID'd. Every barrel gets evaluated 4 to 7 times before it's released. So when we're putting together that 30 barrel blend, I have flavor notes based on the different cooperages. So we use multiple different barrel styles, which obviously can bring, to your point about it hitting all the corners. So I've got a barrel profile that is like custardy, creamy, sweet vanilla. I've got a barrel profile that brings like root beer, Dr. Pepper kind of spice, sarsaparilla. I've got a barrel profile that's like mocha and dark fruits, right? So when we're putting together these blends, it's really important. And I mean, we literally taste every single barrel and think about it in the entirety of that 30 barrel blend to think, how are all these going to complement one another? And I want to take you on a palate ride, right? And so then we'll even go and do a micro blend of those. We'll take a sample from each of the barrels and then let it sit for a few days to kind of marry. And then we'll do some evaluations to make sure we're on the right path. So again, it's not work because we just love doing it, but we're never just like throwing something against the wall. You know what I mean? It's everything is done with great intention. Even our barrels, our char and toast combinations. We worked really closely with Andrew Weabrink at Independent Stave, and then we also get some barrels from West Virginia, Great Barrel Company, and they make great barrels too. But we started with ISC, and they took our new make and they designed 3 completely custom char and toast combinations that complemented our new make, right? And pulling in different directions. So we are a complex toast char 1 is with 18 to 24 month air dried staves seems to be what really works for us. So that char 1, having a complex toast in that stave, then with just a light char, when your distillate is so clean and flavorful and you don't need the subtraction of a heavy char, that subtractive effort of taking out off flavors. Because when you char it inside of a barrel, the only thing you're charring away are those great toasted sugars that were created in the toast process. So we just do a real quick char and then have that really nice complex toast that gets that whiskey in there and grabs all those great flavors and brings them out. So and that's what's great about our barrel picks too, is because when you do a barrel pick with us, you're tasting those individual expressions of barrels that are wildly different from one another. So you might be picking a sweet mash rye, but I'm going to let you taste 5 whiskeys that are all over the place, right? And so that makes for a great barrel pick experience, but then also gives retailers the opportunity to have something that's really unique and special for their customer base.
So would you say that probably has a lot to do with how your whiskeys can taste so well at such a young age? Just more thought and time into the dry aging process and the toast and char levels?
Mm-hmm. It certainly doesn't hurt. I think that it all starts with, first of all, it really starts with your intention and all of your inputs, and then obviously your equipment and the way that you run your equipment. But before we even broke ground at our distillery, I was already making our relationships with our farmers, and those are the same farmers that we have relationships with today, growing our corn, our wheat, and our rye, and then taking our slop on the back end. So having all of your partners that are with you to make this whiskey, having them all super engaged and excited about what they're doing, and then the distillers in the distillery and all the processors and the people bottling, even, I mean, everyone takes such great pride that having all that enthusiasm and that talent and that intentionality and purposefulness, you can really taste it in the whiskey, and there are a lot of new brands on the market, but there are not a lot of them come with an actual place and actual people that are responsible for making that liquid, because a lot of the new brands are source whiskey, which it's fine. I mean, we started with a couple product lines with some source whiskey, and it's fine, but God, there's so much of it out there now that it's kind of like, I think we've reached that saturation point where, people are like, okay, yes, MGP makes really good whiskey, but I've got, I don't care about 25 brands of it out there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
At least that's what I'm hearing from the retailers.
No, I think that's pretty spot on.
Yeah. I think the what struck me about Hard Truth the first time I had it was that you're actually distilling your whiskey. It's that good. And that you're doing a like local sourcing type of business model.
Right.
And like I'm a big fan of Whiskey Acres, which again Dan's not here, but Dan works there. They're a local Illinois brand that actually farm their own grains and distill them and everything. So that's I think that's a really cool business model.
It is.
And so that's one of the type of thing that I'm looking for if I'm going to try something new is obviously is it good, but also like is there something interesting about the brand?
Well, and it also we have our own DNA, right? Nothing's going to taste like our whiskey,
right?
You know what I mean?
Your original 30 barrels from Kentucky are a perfect example of that, on how much different they tasted when you transitioned into distilling in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, it is. And so that authenticity piece and that part where where when people do find us and, the first of all, the whiskey tastes good and they fall in love with the flavor of the whiskey, but then they get to know us, they get to know our story, they get to know what we're about. They know that we're, real people in a real place making whiskey, and we're not going anywhere. We didn't build this thing for a short-term gain. I mean, if you come on our property, you can tell that we really feel that we have as good a shot as anybody to, go into the national brand space of American whiskey and with a lot of pride going into that.
Yeah, it's been 2 years since I've been there, but when I was there, they were saying there's no stopping Rickhouse building.
No, yeah, we're on number 3. We're busting at the seams right now with our first 2. We're on number 3 is getting concrete work starts tomorrow, and then number 4 will be this time next year. So
yes, I think number 2 had just started going up when we were there.
Right.
I'm surprised it's only
in the middle of it, but
on 3 and 4 being built right now.
Man, it's expensive to make. It's expensive to make whiskey. I'll tell you. That's where whenever brands are growing and now I can definitely see where investments start to become critical, because as you're growing and you're thinking, I'm thinking 4 to 6 years out what our growth trajectory is like, and with where we're going now, we've got to make more whiskey fast, and that's what we've just last year, let's see, was it last year about this time we had just started our 24/7, so we upgraded our, so like when you were there probably 2 years ago, we had the 3 fermentation tanks, and so now we've got enough for 24-hour operations, so we're set to run 24/7 now.
Yeah, you guys were shut down the day we were there, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah.
I think it was like Memorial Day, so you might have been shut down regardless. But
right. Yeah.
But yeah.
So how much? I was just going to ask, how much have you guys increased distillation, if at all? Like over the past couple of years, have you started distilling more, or can you just not keep up with space in the rick house?
So we have, from year 1, through year 3 or 4, we were averaging around 1,000 barrels, give or take, a year. But starting a year and a half ago, we upped our production, and now we've got a capacity of about 8,000 barrels a year that we can produce. So it's 8-fold increase. But again, that comes at a cost of building, about the size of rick houses that we build, about 1 a year. So we've got plenty of room on the property. The only problem is it's all hills and hollers, so there's only so much, flat spots that you can put houses.
Hey, well, cool. I got a couple nerdy questions.
Sure.
Yeah, go.
If you're down for that. So would you mind walking us through your primary mash bills real quick?
Sure.
And then, so you're working
how many are there?
There's so
that was
many,
one of my questions.
And I'm doing this podcast. I'll be completely transparent with you guys. I'm doing this podcast on my phone, and I've got a cheat sheet note on this phone that I can't access right now. So I'm going to do my best, because I make the mash bills. It's not like they're overly complicated. We just got so many of them that I might be a percentage off here or there. But I will say that our sweet mash rye is 94% rye, 6% malted barley. Obviously, it's a nod to one of the most iconic Indiana rye whiskeys that's been made and out in the market, the 95.5 from MGP. We cranked the malted barley ratio up just a little bit. I always say it jokingly, but it's really half true, that if we made a 95.5 rye from Indiana, no one would believe that we made it. No matter how much I told them. So that's our sweet mash rye. So it really highlights that rye grain, and it's a tremendous whiskey. Our high road is, I believe, 55 rye, 38 corn, and the remainder malted barley, somewhere around there. So again, high road rye is kind of more of that Kentucky style rye. We've got our Master Distiller's Reserve that we've released, which I don't know if you guys have tried the chocolate malt or the caramel malt or the malted rye.
Yeah,
and those are some fun, playful mash bills. So the chocolate malt and caramel malt are 51 rye, 38. 51 rye, 38 corn, and 11% chocolate malted barley or 11% caramel malted barley. The malted rye is a blend of unmalted and malted rye whiskey, so it's 100% rye. Then with our bourbons, our sweet mash bourbon in the black label with the Rackhouse #1 on the front bottom label, that one I believe is 73 corn. I want to say 19 rye, so rye is the small grain on that one. So it's kind of at 73.19. It's a pretty, it's kind of like just straight down the middle, classic bourbon profile. It's not got like a wacky high malted barley number. I think it's, I can't remember exactly what the malted barley in that one is, maybe 12. But so it's kind of right down the middle. It's a classic. I wanted to have one mash bill that really just kind of hit those classic bourbon notes. The wheated, I'm not going to remember that mash bill off the top of my head, but I believe that one's got a little bit higher malted barley, and then a decent amount of wheat. And then the 4 grain is 78 corn, 9 wheat, 9 rye, 4 malted barley. So The 4-grain really highlights, and I know you guys don't have it in Illinois yet. I don't think, but
we got to try it at the master class.
Oh, good.
Jake didn't get to try it, but everyone else got to try it. That was there.
So the 4-grain really highlights our corn. I mean, at 78% corn, it really is the one that's gonna, even though it's got those, the 4 different grains on the, supporting cast. It really highlights the beautiful corn that we get to use from Doug Miller, our corn farmer. The corn that he grows has a tremendous amount of oil content, not too much, because too much can be hard on your stills, but tremendous amount of oil content that carries over, and so it creates this really nice kind of cream corn, kind of effect in your mouth, a really deep sweetness that I love. So I think that covers most of them. We've got a few kind of one-offs here or there. I've got a high rye bourbon that we started producing a little bit later in the game, so it's not out yet. And we've got some higher corn stuff. It's the good news is we haven't made a mash bill that we didn't love yet. It's just a matter of how many SKUs are we going to put out. But that's the great thing about like our Master Distillers Reserve or our Barrel Finish Reserve or any kind of distillery only release. I can kind of take some of those smaller produced one-off mash bills and run them through those programs to keep people excited about the brand while keeping kind of the main lines moving forward.
Yeah. So I think those types of like one-off things are fun and cool, and like like the chocolate and caramel malts are like exactly what you think they should taste like.
Right,
they're excellent and very dessert forward and fantastic. And from what I remember, the malted rye also has like all the like best like increased kind of like sweet notes from the malting process in it that like really give it like a unique flavor.
Thank you.
So like that's cool. To get to do that, like just as these like one-off projects.
It is, and it keeps us excited. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, like, those who know about Hard Truth, like, it keeps them very excited too. Like, what's next? What am I gonna try coming up? People like Jake that own every Hard Truth bottle, they're not gonna walk into the store and buy High Road every single time, but when there's a new release, they're gonna pick it up.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's super cool for the store. It's super cool for the consumer, and I'm sure it's cool for you guys as well to be able to experiment and taste these new things that are coming about, which kind of leads into another question that I had was, with all these different mash bills, like, how do you decide what mash bill to use? Are you getting like influence from other distilleries or people with more experience, or you're just kind of going with what you know and just
going with our guts, going with our gut? I mean, really, now through the lens of time, we whenever I designed the High Road mash bill, for example, that there wasn't an intent from the beginning that was going to be a lower proof whiskey. It was just going to be a rye whiskey with corn in the mash bill. Now that we know that it does so well and that the price is, the price is really affordable, that it's super sessionable, it seems to be really pulling through off the shelves at a higher pace because of the price point. Obviously, then we start to adjust, like, okay, well, we need to start making more of that than we were in the past, and maybe the sweet mash rye, we're still going to continue to make a lot of it, but we can look at sales data and velocity to help guide us. So there are things like that help us, but from a creative standpoint, it's kind of just been a very purposeful and well thought out strategy, but not like I definitely, one thing there's something I cannot stand, which is chasing after something. Well, the good thing with whiskey is you can't really chase after something because the time horizon is too long. If somebody comes out with something good, you're like, oh my God, we've got to do that. It's not going to be 6 years until you get it out. So but I detest that anyways. I don't like chasing trends. But I do like tasting things and trying to do our version of it. So, for example, um, our Harvest Rye project this last fall with the Mellencamp Whiskey Company, which is awesome. So
it was another
yeah,
question I had for you,
yeah.
because right when I thought Hard Truth couldn't get any better, the Harvest Rye came out, and it is like completely off
Oh,
profile
thanks.
from other Hard Truth,
It
and
is.
I've gotten so much positive feedback on that one, so much that I think bought
Thank you.
out the rest of the cases that the distributor had for Illinois once we
Oh,
found out
that's
it wasn't going
awesome.
to be produced again. Yeah, so
Right.
like,
Yeah. So that's
yeah,
enough. So,
keep going.
so
Sorry.
yeah, no, you're good. So that mash bill was 72 rye, 28 corn. I didn't use any malted barley because we get our malted barley from a maltster that's, it's because really barley doesn't grow in Indiana very well. So I wanted to do a mash bill that was 100% our farmers grew the grains, right? And so I've got a rye and a bourbon mash bill that I laid down whenever, I did one big chunk of it in, I think it was 2019. Um, Without knowing where it was going to go, right? I just knew that I wanted to do something to highlight our farmers and our farming partners and Indiana family farmers. And so then all of a sudden, I get this cold call, and it was from Hud Mellencamp, and he is his business partner Levi and best friend, and they're like, hey, we love your whiskey, and we're really thinking about entering the whiskey space, and wanted to talk to you about potential partnerships. Which, we have been approached by a number of things, and I kind of was like, I mean, obviously, sure, come on out. Let's. I'll walk around the distillery. We'll talk, because I like to meet people and show them around, anyways. But I honestly, going into it, didn't have any intention on it going anywhere, right? And then all of a sudden, these guys walk in. They don't have any pretense. They don't have any real like pie in the sky thing. They don't want it to be a celebrity brand, even though Hud's father is John Mellencamp. They were focused on, we want to do something that is in Indiana, that's produced in Indiana, and that supports Indiana farmers. So they're talking to me about all this, and I didn't say it to them that first meeting. I'm like, oh my God, I've got that whiskey that I laid down in 2019. It'd be perfect for, because even back then we joked about, when we first did that whiskey, we joked about, oh, maybe in 5 years from now we'll get hooked up with Farm Aid, and this can be like something we can do with Farm Aid. And then all of a sudden these guys are walking around with me, and I was like, this can't be real, right? So then obviously there's always high risk and difficulty getting a partnership like that together and agreeing on terms and all that. But it all went so naturally. It was such a great fit. Mellencamp's, right down the road from our distillery, has been forever. His recording studio is literally right down the road from us. And so it all really worked together. But back to your, me talking about chasing trends and all that. And I didn't want to like it. And so I'm not a hater, but
Amberana?
yes, sir. So I had heard about it, and there are people that were fanatically in love with it, and people that were like, whatever, this is a thing that should go away. And so anytime I hear those two things, I'm like, okay, I got to check this out, right? So, I really actually enjoyed, especially, so my buddy Jason down at Starlight, they did, I tasted one of their Amberana finished whiskeys, and
they're kind of the creators. Like, they kind of put Amberana on the map with American whiskey.
Right. So I was like, this is really good. Then I talked to Jason, and Jason's like, oh my God. He said, those barrels are so strong that literally I can taste flavor drift. He swears that he can taste. So he's got an Amberana barrel that he's finishing some whiskey in, and then he's got some bourbon over here in its original cask. And he swears that them aging next to each other, he can taste some of the Amberana flavor drift in the.
I believe it.
Whiskey. Yeah. So I knew that it was something that we needed to be really careful with if we wanted to play around with it. So. This is not breaking news because I think the press release came out yesterday, but for the second release in our Mellencamp Whiskey Company partnership, it's a bourbon rye blend. And so the wonderful gift that my grandmother gave me by giving me all these flavors is I can, like, if I've tasted things enough, I kind of have the ability. I know I'm not alone in this, but I have the ability to read something on paper or think about moving a percentage of a flavor profile, 15 more percent, and what would that change in the flavor profile, and I can almost taste it just thinking about it, right? So tasting this Amberana, and I'm like, it's kind of cool, cinnamon toast crunch. I definitely get that. People are talking about that. It's real sweet, desserty. I was like, I could really, I enjoy the flavor profile of it. Now, I've tasted some that were overdone, for sure. And I think that you can also take a pretty crappy whiskey and treat it with Amberana, and it is going to taste like Amberana finished whiskey. You know what I mean? So it can, I believe
it'll just taste completely different.
It can be a trick, right? And so I knew that if we played in that space, I wanted to say, all right, so this is how Hard Truth, this is how we approach woods like Amberana, right? So I'm thinking about it, and I was thinking about it, and I talked to Chris, and I said, you know what, Chris? That dark, cocoa-rich depth of our chocolate malted rye, I think would play really nicely with this Amberana. And then we had our bourbon coming through. I knew these are going to be one-offs. Got too many damn mash bills anyway. So I was like, let's do our first bourbon rye blend. Let's use some chocolate malted rye, and then that's where we played around with the percentage of how many chocolate malted barrels. And so it is a bourbon rye blend with our sweet mash bourbon and our chocolate malted rye, rested on toasted Amberana wood. So, and I will tell you guys that I'm really excited for y'all to try it. And for all the people who kind of are over it, as it were, this really, what I love about this is the flavors are so integrated. It's not that you're tasting this over here and this over here and this down here. It becomes one thing that's more than just an Amberana finished whiskey. So I'm really excited. We launched that. I think it's April 6th at the distillery, but it's going to hit the Illinois market for sure, and it's tremendous.
Nice.
Yeah, I was going to say no. Sorry, but no bullshit. If anyone can do an Amberana finish well, it's got to be you guys. It's got to be
thanks,
the Hard Truth rye and bourbon. I feel like would just mesh so perfectly because it already has all those different flavor notes combined with the Amberana, and it is. Yeah. It's for sure a trend that's on the downturn. Like we saw a little time period where anything Amberana sold out immediately, and now things are starting to kind of sit a little bit on the shelf,
hang around.
But I think this is going to be a really good revival to the Amberana wood, and just kind of open people's eyes about what can possibly come. And I might be totally off, but I trust you on this, Brian.
Yeah, no, we wouldn't release anything that I'm even slightly worried about. This thing is a killer. Now I know how haters behave, right? There are people that are going to, publicly be like, "Whoa, they shouldn't be doing this," or "I tried it and I don't like it," and then behind the scenes they're going to be like, "Damn, that's really good."
Or they're just going to judge it before they try it, and they're going to be like, "Oh, they jumped on the trend too late," and now when Amberana is on the downturn, they come out with an Amberana finish. But it's Hard Truth has always been a brand where you just need to try it. Like, don't worry about the age statement, don't worry about the mash bill, don't worry about where it's coming from. Just try this whiskey, and the whiskey will do all the talking for itself. So
and, I'm a huge fan of rye. I love rum finish ryes, because the sweetness of the rum just contradicts the spicy spicy notes so well,
really
and
nice
balances everything. It just perfectly balances flavors. So I'm glad to hear that you're going to take some of the chocolate malt rye and use that
and the regular
offset.
rye.
Yeah, offsetting that Amberana note. And I think is perfect. Like that sounds like such a good combo.
I can't wait for you to taste it. It's so
good. Just another thing that I've noticed lately, talking to customers in the aisle, is they're starting to realize that rye works a lot better with Amberana too than bourbon does. Which you haven't really seen a ton of Amberana ryes. Dark Arts is one of the first to kind of put out a permanent SKU with Amberana rye. I think the only company to put out a permanent Amberana rye. So I think hopefully more distilleries will catch on that it works a little bit better with rye and just more versatile grains and mash bills than just a straight bourbon.
Sure. Yeah, and I don't know why people are getting so upset. I mean, for God's sakes, this is whiskey. Have some fun. You know, I mean,
have some fun, right?
Just get some different stuff on your bar. I mean, there's nothing more exciting than, you know, if you've got somebody over who's either just getting into whiskey or, you know, they've got their collection and you know, introducing something that pulls a flavor in a different direction than they're used to. And that's what this is all about, right? Sitting down, conversing, having a drink, talking about it, letting people try things. I mean, if you can't have fun doing that, I'm not sure you can have fun.
Yeah. No. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we're at like an hour here. This has been a blast.
Oh yeah, super fun.
It's been awesome to talk to you about all this stuff. I gotta ask one more question.
Sure.
Can you reveal any cool shit coming up?
Oh yeah. Well, so we did the. Let's see. We've got it. So we've got two. We'll have two Mellencamp releases this year. So that the Amberana chocolate malt is coming out April 6th. And then we've got another one coming this fall. We've got another barrel finish reserve and another master distiller's reserve. How about this? This is what I'll tease for you guys. We are going to. We've done a lot with different mash bills and letting them sit, you know, by themselves and letting you taste them on their own. This fall will be the fall of letting you all see what we can do with blending our sweet mash whiskeys. So there are going to be some cool marriages of our mash bills coming together. You're going to get some older whiskey. And I think for those folks who, you know, have tried all the different mash bills but are now looking to see what we can do with the blending, with our blending chops, this will be the year that you're going to get to see a lot of that come to life.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited. That sounds good.
I gotta drop a coupon code.
Yeah, do it.
I have to. As long as you guys, listeners, if you promise not to buy the Kentucky Sweet Mash, because I don't want to sell out of that too quick. But BM Truth will get you 10% off any Hard Truth product that we have in stock. Does not. Awesome. It won't work with items that are already on sale, but BM Truth at checkout online will get you 10% off our entire inventory of Hard Truth whiskeys. That coupon code will never expire, but of course, things that sell out, some of them we won't be able to get back. So use it sooner rather than later. And don't use it on the Kentucky Sweet Mash, because that thing is worth paying full price on. And I might call you out on future episodes if you do, but I won't have a way to stop it. So BM Truth will get you 10% off any Hard Truth product.
If anybody was going to use that, it would be me.
I was going to say, you're probably going to put it in right now before I apply the coupon code to activate. But no, I mean, Brian, thank you so much for your time on this episode. I'm sure we could have gone for about 3 or 4 hours here, just going back and forth and shooting the shit. But
let's do it again. Let's just do it again, guys.
Yeah, I was gonna say, would love to have you on. 6 months from now, a year from now, whatever. Yeah. Talk about some new releases and where Hard Truth is headed and where they've changed. But this has been a great hour, and thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
You guys, thank you for having me on. And if you want to, I know you got a cool home studios or studios there, but if you want to come and do a remote podcast on our property, we've got a couple quiet spots that are good for that.
And
I would
come and visit us or have me on again, and we'll talk some more about whiskey. I could probably talk about it forever. I'm not sure I could ever stop. So.
Yeah,
all
for
right.
sure.
Let's pick a date.
All right. Awesome. All right. Thanks, guys.
Right.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks again,
Yeah,
Bryan.
so plugs real quick, right?
Yep. Yeah.
goldeaglewine.com to use your Hard Truth coupon. That BM Truth, 10% off all Hard Truth products. Follow us on Instagram at Gold Eagle Wine and Facebook at Gold Eagle Spirits. And then Jake will plug Bourbon Matters.
Yep. You can watch us on YouTube and Spotify. Search for Bourbon Matters. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Bourbon Matters. Leave us comments, share, subscribe, click the notification bell, all that fun stuff.
Anything for Hard Truth, Bryan, or yourself?
Yeah, so you can find us at hardtruth.com. We've got a spirit finder widget on this website where you can kind of put in whichever spirits you want to find, including the Kentucky Sweet Mash, and put in your zip code, and it'll take you right to Gold Eagle, and you use your BM Truth code and buy them now.
Perfect.
Nice.
Yeah, and honestly though, if you go to our website, we've got an email list that you can get on. We don't bombard you with a bunch of BS, but it really is a good tool. We send really thoughtful updates on new releases, things that are coming out, things happening at the distillery, and please come visit us. You will be very surprised. And like I said, if you're heading on 65 from Chicago down to Louisville, we are literally less than 20 minutes off of the road. So come visit us. And this has been really fun, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
I had a blast. So this is great. All right.
Cool.
We'll see you next week.
Cheers.
Cheers.
See you guys.
See you.